Hey guys, I'm back from my training op, and I have a lot of really interesting stories to share with you. I've got enough that I'm going to break them up into two parts. This being the first. I'd love to put them all in one entry, but I just haven't had the time to write them all down yet. I didn't have anything too crazy happen while I was out there, but we did have one accident with a rookie that I found relevant. Since I'm sure you guys have been waiting for these, I'll just get right to the stories. I'll assign each batch of stories to the person who told them to me. First up, Katie. Katie is a vet who's been an SAR officer for about 15 years. She specializes in high elevation mountain rescues and is widely considered one of the best in her field. She was one of the more enthusiastic storytellers, and since we were together a fair amount during exercises, she ended up telling me about 4 that really stuck with me. The first one she told me in response to my asking about our most traumatic calls. She shook her head and told me that really bad calls happen more frequently on the mountains, since the potential for nasty accidents is higher. About 5 years ago, one of the parks she worked at had a string of disappearances, and it was a bad year, one of the worst on record as far as weather went. They were getting about a foot of new snow every couple of days, and there were a few avalanches that killed some climbers. They warned people about staying on the mapped areas, but of course, there's always those who don't listen. In one particularly nasty case, an entire family got wiped out because the father decided he knew better than the officials. He took them out into an area that wasn't safe. They were snowshoeing, and as best Katie could figure, they'd walked onto a shelf of snow that looked solid, but actually wasn't. It gave way, and this family went ass over tea kettle almost 300 feet down a slope. They landed on the rocks at the bottom, and the parents died instantly. One of the kids did as well, but the other 2 survived. One had a broken leg and fractured ribs. The other was almost unharmed, save for some bruises and a sprained ankle. The uninjured child left his sibling behind and set out to find help. Katie said the kid didn't make it more than half a mile before the storm overtook him. The kid stopped to try and get warm, or maybe just to rest, and that ended up freezing to death. They ended up finding the family with the help of some witnesses who saw them heading out into the wilderness. She was the one to find the kid who had frozen to death, looking for help. She said it started to snow, just enough to obscure long-distance vision, but not enough to make searching impossible. She saw a figure sitting in the snow up ahead. She got to it as quickly as possible. She described in detail how as she got closer, she realized first that it was a child, second that they were deceased, and third that they had frozen in one of the most pitiful positions she's ever found a corpse in. The kid was sitting upright, with his knees tucked up against his chest. His arms were curled around him, and his head was tucked up in his coat. When she moved the coat to look at his face, she saw that he had died crying. His face was twisted, and the tears were frozen on his cheeks. She said it was painfully obvious that the kid was terrified when he succumbed to hypothermia. And as a mother, it broke her heart. She told me repeatedly that she hopes the father is burning in hell as we speak. The other traumatic story that she told me that stood out in my mind was one that happened when she was a rookie. Her team got a report of an experienced climber who hadn't come home the previous day. His wife was convinced that something bad had happened because he had never failed to come home on time. They went out looking for him and had to climb what sounded like some very technically challenging parts of the mountain. They got to a relatively flat area, and Katie started seeing blood in the snow. She followed the trail, and as she went, she started seeing little bits of tissue. She wasn't sure exactly what body part it had come from, but the further she followed it, the more there was. She follows this blood and tissue trail to a sheltered area under a cliff face. She finds the climber. She said there was so much blood, more than she'd ever seen. He was lying face down, one arm stretched in front of him, as if he died crawling. She looks closer and sees that he's been partially disemboweled, which is where the tissue she had seen had come from. The guy had an ice pick tucked into his hip holster, and it's covered in blood. They'll never be sure exactly what happened, but she said, as best she can figure, this is what went down. The guy had been attempting to climb up to the next area, and had been using his ice axe to ascend. He'd probably hit a loose patch and had fallen. On the way down, or possibly when he landed, he got impaled by his own axe, and it had disemboweled him. He dragged himself along, tearing pieces of himself out as he went, and he had died under the cliff face. She isn't terribly bothered by gore, but I guess a few of the guys who came to help remove the body threw up when they turned him over, and a good portion of his guts spilled out. I mentioned to her that I was interested in hearing about any experiences she had with people completely disappearing. Her eyes light up. She leans in close to me and says, "Wanna hear a real doozy?" She tells me about how, when she first started, there was a case that got a lot of attention in the media. A family had been out berry picking in an area of the forest very close to the entrance of the park. They had two little boys, both under the age of 5. At some point during the day, one of them vanishes, and there's an absolutely massive search, and they find absolutely nothing. It's another of those cases where it's like the kid was never there in the first place. The dogs just sit down and don't pick up on anything. No trace of the kid is found. The search goes on for about 2 months, but is eventually called off. Fast forward to 6 months later, family comes back to place flowers at a memorial that's been set up for the kid. They bring their other son. While they're placing flowers, they lose sight of the kid for about 3 seconds. In that span of time, he vanishes into thin air. Now, obviously, the parents are devastated. It's awful enough to lose one child, but to lose 2 is beyond imagining. The search is huge, one of the largest in state history. There are about 300 volunteers combing every inch of this park, looking for the kid. But again, there's no trace of him. The search goes on for about a week, with people looking miles from the part of the park he vanished from. And then almost 2 weeks later, a volunteer almost 15 miles from the designated search area radars in he found the kid. They assumed the kid was dead, but the volunteer says he's not only alive, but he's in good shape. Katie and her team go out to rescue the kid, and when they get there, she can't believe that this is the kid that's been missing. His clothes are clean. There's no dirt on him anywhere, and he doesn't appear traumatized. The volunteer says he found the kid sitting on a log, playing with a little twig bundle that's bound together with some old rope. Katie asks the kid where he's been, who he was with for those 2 weeks. And the kid tells him that he's been with the fuzzy man. Now, Katie firmly believes in Bigfoot, so she gets all excited and questions the kid what he means by fuzzy. Was he hairy? But the kid says no. He wasn't hairy, he was a fuzzy man. He describes a man that's blurry, like when you close your eyes but not all the way closed. He says the man came out of the woods and took the kid with him deep into the woods. The kid says he slept in a hollow tree, and the fuzzy man gave him berries to eat. Katie questions if the man was mean, if he scared the kid, and the kid says, no, he wasn't scary, but I didn't like how he didn't have eyes. Katie says they got the kid back to headquarters, and a cop takes him into town to talk to him about what happened. She's friends with the cop that talked to him, and she said the kid described being capped in this tree by the fuzzy man and given berries whenever he was hungry. He was allowed to wander around a very specific clearing, but when he tried to go further, the fuzzy man would get mad and yell real loud, even though he didn't have a mouth. When the kid got scared at night, the fuzzy man made it go brighter and gave him the twig bundle. He said the fuzzy man was going to keep him, but he had to let him go because he wasn't the right kind, whatever that means. He can't or won't elaborate more on that. The cops are just sort of left scratching their heads, and the search for his brother is renewed with no result. The kid has no idea where his brother might be. He can't provide any details or clues, and because of that, they never found him. The last story that Katie told me was of something that happened to her when she got separated from her training group when she was a rookie. They were learning the basics of high elevation belaying on a well-mapped side of the mountain. She had to use the bathroom. She went off about 50 yards from the group during a meal break and did her business. I'll tell the rest exactly as she told me. So I had to go take a piss, and once I'm done, I start going back to the group. But I've only gotten about 5 feet when I realized that I have no idea where I am. And this wasn't a, oh I got turned around lost. I mean, I had literally no clue where I was. If you had asked me, I wouldn't even know what state I was in. It was sort of how I imagine people with amnesia feel, you know? You're completely lost, and you have no idea what to do. So I stood there for a while, just trying to figure out where the fuck I was and what I was supposed to do. But the longer I stand there, the more confused and turn around I get. So I started walking. As I recall, I just picked a random direction and went for it. And as I'm walking, it's just getting worse and worse, to the point where I have no concept of why I'm on this mountain in the first place. I'm just trudging through the snow, and then I start hearing this voice. It's kind of inside my head, almost like if a frog or a toad could talk, all low and croaky. And it's telling me over and over, it's okay, you just need to find something to eat. Find something to eat and you'll be okay, just keep walking. And find something to eat. Eat. So I start looking around for anything that I can eat, and I swear to God, I've never felt that hungry in my whole life. It was bottomless. And I think I would have eaten just about anything you put in front of me right then. I had no concept of time, so I had no idea how long I had been out there. When I hear an actual voice coming towards me, I go towards it and see one of the other SAR officers, and he looks fucking terrified. He's running towards me, asking me if I'm okay and what the hell I'm doing out here. And the scary thing is, as he's running towards me, I kind of see myself reaching into my belt for my hunting knife. Not even really thinking about I'm doing it, but what I am thinking is that I have to eat. If I don't eat, I'll never be okay. I just have to eat. He sees me doing that, and he backs away right away. He yells at me to put my knife away, and that he's not gonna hurt me. And that sort of snaps me back all of a sudden. All of a sudden, I know exactly where I am, and I put the knife away. I run to him and ask him how long I've been gone, thinking he'll tell me I've been gone for an hour or a half or so. But he tells me I've been gone for 2 days. I've gone over 2 peaks and ended up almost on the other side of the mountain. If I had kept going, I would have ended up wandering into about 300 miles of wilderness. They would have never found me. I can't believe I'm not dead, and of course I don't know what the fuck to think. To me, no time has passed at all. I don't say anything, I just go back with him to a rendezvous point, and I'm taken back to HQ to be airlifted to the hospital. And I get there, they do all these kinds of examinations and try to figure out what happened. As best they can guess, I had some kind of weird puke state, which is kind of like amnesia, or a weird seizure that knocks my brain out of whack. But the reality is, we don't really know. It never happened again. But I'll tell you, ever since then, I never go out there alone. People rag on me for making them come with me when I have to leave the crew. But I just tell them that listening to me go to the bathroom in the snow is better than losing me for 2 days on a freezing mountain. Next person I talked to was EW, a former trainer who now works as an EMT. He still comes to ops like this to help out, but doesn't work full time for us anymore. He specialized in finding lost kids. He sorta has a sixth sense when it comes to knowing where the kids would have wandered off to. He's a legend among those more senior vets, but he gets embarrassed if you compliment him on his work. He just sat down with me at dinner one evening, and we ended up swapping stories. Most of them were just casual, but when we got on the subject of our weird calls, and mentioned that I had a buddy who had gone up a set of stairs, he got kind of quiet and asked me if I heard of a little boy who disappeared from his park a few years back. I hadn't, so he told me this story. They were out looking for this 11-year-old boy, Joey, who had gone missing near a river. Of course, the first thought was that he had fallen in and drowned. But when they brought the dogs out, they led SAR officers away from the river and up to a very densely forested area. When we do searches for people, we search in a grid pattern, and we search every box of the grid incredibly thoroughly. What EW's team noticed right away was that a very strange pattern was emerging. Dogs in alternating boxes were picking up Joey's scent, but losing it when they overlapped with another box. If you think of a checkerboard, Joey's scent was being picked up in a random black square, but never in red. This, of course, didn't make any sense, because how could this kid bounce from area to area without leaving a scent in each place he passed? EW and his partner pass into a new box of the grid, and EW sees a set of stairs about 50 yards away. He tells his partner that they need to go check near it, but his partner flat out refuses. He tells EW that he's made it a point never to go near them, and that while it may be routine, he's not gonna pretend that those stairs are normal. He tells EW that he'll wait inside while EW checks. EW says he's irritated, but he felt for the guy and didn't push him on the subject. I walked over to the stairs. They were kind of small, like stairs to a basement. I don't really feel strongly one way or another about them. The stairs, I mean. So I wasn't scared or anything. I guess I'm like everyone else. I just prefer not to think about them too much. Anyway, I went over, and I could see that there was something lying on the bottom step, sort of curled up. My heart sinks. Because of course you always hope for the best. And we were confident that we'd find the kid alive, because he had only been missing for a few hours. But I knew right away that it was him, and that he was dead. He was curled up into a little ball on the step, holding his stomach. It looked like he had been in horrible pain when he died, but I didn't see any blood, except some on his lips and chin. I radioed in that I had found him, and we got his body back to command. That poor family. They were devastated. The parents couldn't understand how he had died. He had only been gone for a short amount of time. And on top of that, we didn't have any obvious cause of death. It just made it worse. I figured he had probably eaten something poisonous, since he was holding his stomach when I found him. But I didn't want to guess. It's hard enough to hear your kid is dead, let alone some smart ass guessing about what happened. They took him away, and I went home, tried not to think about it. I hate finding dead kids, man. I love this job, but it's just one of the reasons I left. I've got 2 daughters, and the idea of losing them that way just... He choked up a little here. I'm not great with emotional stuff like that, and it's always sort of awkward to see a grown man cry. So I didn't really know what to do. He pulled himself together eventually, though, and he kept going. We don't always hear back from the coroners about the cause of that. It's not really our job to know, I guess. And sometimes if they think it's foul play, they won't tell us because of some legal bullshit. But I've got a friend who works for the sheriff's department, and he'll usually pass along any interesting info if I ask. In this case, though, I actually got a call from him about a week later. He questions if I remember the kid, and of course I do. And he says some seriously weird shit is going on. He tells me, EW, man, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but the coroner has no idea what happened to the kid. He's never seen anything like it. My friend goes on to tell me that when the coroner opened the kid up, he couldn't even believe what he was seeing. The kid's organs were like Swiss cheese. Quarter-sized holes were punched clean through. Just about every single organ this kid had, aside from his heart and lungs. But his stomach, his colon, his kidneys, even one of his testicles, were full of these clean holes. My friend said the coroner described it as if someone had taken a hole punch machine and punched holes out of everything. They were so neat. But the kid didn't have a scratch on him. No entry or exit wound. The closest thing to this anyone had ever seen was a guy who had filled himself with buckshot a year or so back while cleaning his rifle. No one had a clue what possibly could have happened. My friend asked me if I ever heard of anything like it, or if he had similar cases in the past. But I never even heard of something like that. And I told him I wasn't going to be any help to him. And as far as I know, the coroner determined the cause of that as something like massive internal bleeding. But no one knows what really happened. I've never been able to forget that kid. I have nightmares about it sometimes. I don't let my kids go into the woods alone. And when we go together, I never let them out of sight. I used to love it out here. But that case and a couple others just sort of ruined it for me. Dinner was over, so we started to clean up and go back to our cabins. Before we went our separate ways, he puts his hand on my shoulder and looked at me really close. Tells me there's bad things out there. Things that don't care if we have families or lives, or that we can think and feel. He tells me to be careful, and he walks away. I didn't have a chance to talk with him again, but that story, it stuck with me. By pure coincidence, I got to talk to another vet, a PB, who's been in the SAR field for years. We were partnered on a grid sweep doing a training exercise, and we were chatting casually about how we like the job, what kinds of things we've seen, and like. At one point, we passed an old set of stairs, though these were probably from an old fire lookout, given that the area we were in. I sort of casually mentioned that I was curious about the stairs, and that I wished to know more about them. He got kinda quiet, and looked like he was gonna tell me something. I wasn't sure if he should. Finally, he told me to turn off my radio. Obviously, this is something we are never, ever supposed to do. But I did, and he did the same. About 7 years ago, he tells me, he was out on a call with a rookie. They were in an area of the park that had a lot of strange reports and events. Disappearances, stories about lights in the forest, odd noises, things like that. The rookie was totally spooked, kept going on and on about things out in the woods. According to PB, the guy wouldn't shut up about the goat man, just on and on, goat man this, goat man that. Finally, I told him that there was plenty else to be afraid of out here. That was very real. And he had better get over this thing with the goat man. The rookie wanted to know what kind of things I was talking about, and I just told him to shut up and walk. We crossed it over a little ridge, and there was a staircase about 10 yards away. The rookie stops dead in his tracks and just stands there looking at him. Tell him, see? That's something you should be afraid of. The rookie asked me what the hell these things are doing out here, and for some reason I just open up and tell him the truth. Or what I've been told is the truth. I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for doing what I did, and I could get in a lot of trouble for repeating it to you. But you're a nice kid, and I want you to stop looking into this. Quit while you're ahead. So I'll tell you what I know, under the condition you never say a word of this to the Swoops. I told him I wouldn't say a word. He double checks our radios are off. When it first started out, we were a little less tight-lipped about them, and other things that happen out here. We warned people before they were even hired there was weird shit going on. I guess the Forest Service was tired of having such a massive turnover rate, and they wanted people to know that what they were getting into. So they started having people sign these agreements that they wouldn't go to the media about what they were going to see. The Forest Service didn't want to scare people away, so the last thing they needed were spooked recruits running off to the media with stories of ghosts and haunted stairs. But eventually they found out that the agreements weren't necessary. People not only didn't want to talk about what they saw, they wouldn't. A few times media tried to talk to these people, and kids or folks disappear, and no one would say a word. I can't really explain it. I guess we just don't want to admit anything is wrong. This is our job. To be out in the woods every single day. We don't need to be spooked. And the best way to avoid that is to pretend everything's okay. So I'll tell you everything I can. And after that, I'm done talking about it for good. And I expect you to not bring it up around me, ever. The stairs have been out here as long as the parks have existed. We have records going back decades describing them. Sometimes people go up them, nothing happens. Other times, look, I really don't like talking about this, but sometimes really bad shit happens. One guy got his hand sliced clean off when he got to the top step. He reached out to touch a tree branch. It happened so fast. 1 second his hand was there, and the next was gone. Completely clean wound. We didn't even find his hand, and the guy almost died. Another time, a woman reached out, touched one of the stairs, and a blood vessel in her brain popped. Literally exploded like a water balloon. She sort of stumbled down, came over to me, and all she got out was, "I think something's wrong with me." She dropped like a sack of flowers, dead before she hit the ground. I'll never forget the way the blood leaked into the inside of her eye before she died. I watched it turn red. I watched it happen, and there was a damn thing I could do to help. We warn people not to go near them, but there's always at least one idiot who does. And even if nothing happens to them, something bad always happens. Kids go missing if we're on their trail. Someone dies the next day, cut in half in a completely safe part of the park. I don't know why, but something bad always happens. I don't know exactly why they're out here, but it doesn't matter. They're here, and if we're smart, we'll tell our near officers exactly what they're capable of. We were both quiet for a while. I was afraid to talk because I wasn't sure if he was done. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Finally, he spoke up again. You ever notice how you can't find the same ones twice? I nodded, expecting him to continue, but he just stayed quiet, walking alongside me. Eventually, he started a story about the biggest deer he had ever seen in the park, and he didn't bring up the subject again. And I didn't press him for any more stories. He dropped out of the op the next day. Apparently, he left before the sun came up. He said he was sick, though none of us have heard from him since then. I'm gonna stop for the time being. I'll try and post the next part the coming days. But what with it being the end of summer, things are pretty busy here. Thanks for your continued interest, guys. You really awakened this curiosity in me. But I don't know if this curiosity is the best thing to have right now.